Welcome to You Make the Difference. I'm Wanda Walker, and today we're talking to Bob Gehring. Bob is the new manager for the Goodwill Industries Career Center in LaGrange, and they're building a building, and it's very exciting, and we'll talk about all of that in a few minutes. But first of all, Bob, tell us a little bit about your background.
Thank you for having me, Wanda.
You're so welcome.
I am a Southerner by choice, not by accident. Grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and wound up somehow or another getting into the business of manufacturing, training, and consulting with Kimberly-Clark.
Yes.
Starting in Wisconsin, which is where the company was founded and the headquarters were there in the 80s, and then moved to Atlanta when they opened a significant new, basically everything but the consumer products headquarters in Atlanta. And as a result of that, I got real involved in the building diaper liner and how it was built. And then they decided to open this pilot plant in LaGrange, the Kimberly-Clark plant, and I was asked to go and help as the HR manager. That's how I got to LaGrange. It's a long and crazy story.
Yes, and we're so glad that happened.
Yeah.
Yes. I knew Joyce Buchanan, and I know she worked at Kimberly-Clark for a long time, so I bet you knew Joyce.
Oh, way longer than I did. Yeah,
Okay.
she was the administrative assistant to the plant manager.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so you came from the north to the south. Where'd you go to school?
Well, I went to high school and grade school in Pittsburgh, and then I went to Washington and Lee University in Lexington, Virginia, on a not a scholarship, but I was asked to play basketball there, which was my passion.
Yes.
And I got a degree in religion and history.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Great. So, Bob, I want us just to start off and you tell us how you came to know Jesus and what impact that's had on your life.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I grew up in a Presbyterian family where we went to church, but it didn't really have much, of an impact on our lives.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my parents were good people, and we all believed in God. But so when I was a teenager, I was, already starting to skirt around the,
Yes.
the areas where you could get in trouble, with drinking and smoking and, all that kind of stuff. And so my mom got a little concerned about me, and she heard about this new high school outreach program called Young Life.
Yes.
Okay? And of course, we have a vibrant Young Life group here in LaGrange. And she had this is when I was a sophomore in high school, and she called a friend who had the only way you could say this is a hot, beautiful senior named Debbie Rudolph.
Yes.
Drive over, ask me if I would go with her to this Young Life meeting, and drive over and pick me up in her Mustang convertible. This is in 1966.
Yes.
So I said, "Oh, you betcha." And that first meeting I went to, Young Life is let's make the gospel meaningful and fun for
Yes.
kids to hear about. Unlike what happens in a lot of churches. And they start with all this cool entertainment and singing and all this kind of stuff, and then the leader gives a talk where he talks in a way that you can really relate to, and this happened to be about the tax collector who climbed up in the tree to see
Yes.
Jesus, and
Yes.
it changed his life and all the things, and it just it resonated to me, and in the end I went along with what he said, gave my life to Jesus, didn't tell anybody for a couple weeks, and then he came driving around early one morning when I was at the bus stop.
Yes.
And said, "Hey, you want to go with me? We have a meeting every Tuesday morning with boys called Campaigners, where we read the Bible and talk about it." And I said, "Sure, I'll go with you." And so he picked me up and he said, I'm surprised you're interested in this. Did you enjoy being at the club? I said, yeah. I said, matter of fact, I prayed the prayer you said. He said, no kidding.
Yes.
So you're a believer then? I said, yeah, absolutely. I just don't know what it means or what to do about it. But that dramatically changed my life and became a central part of my basically my development for the rest of high school. And I went to a pretty much all-white high school. And when I was a senior, everything changed when Dr. King was assassinated. And this same leader took me and a bunch of other boys down behind the curfew limit, because Pittsburgh, like many cities this is back in '67, we're on fire,
Yes.
And we met with a bunch of black kids that were in a Young Life community there, and it made some friends. And even though I knew black kids from playing basketball, I had no friends. And it changed my whole life and gave me a real desire to be a part of a more diverse community, a diverse world, and especially a diverse body of Christ, which Young Life really was. So anyway, that had a huge impact on me, and I went to their summer programs in Colorado for the next 3 years, sophomore, junior, senior. And Virginia started a Young Life program there, which is how I met my wife, who was lived there in Lexington. And worked in and all, pretty much all minority housing project for a year when I got out of school.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And it's still impacting your life today.
Oh, dramatically, yeah.
Yeah, I can see that by the community work that you're involved in.
Yeah.
It's great.
And I was a part with Jim and Debbie Bruce of starting Young Life here in LaGrange in the first place, which was back in the 90s.
Yes.
And we had a good program for 6 or 7 years, and then all of our kids got too old, and we sort of moved on to other things, and then it went dormant for a while, and now it's back even better than when we had it.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
Yay, that is good to hear.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me why you left Kimberly-Clark and why you decided to stay in LaGrange all these many years.
Okay. Yeah, so I left Kimberly-Clark primarily because of something that happened via a initiative called Troop 2000. I don't know if you remember Troop 2000, if you were here.
Yeah.
So it was it was a, what do we want? This is in 1987, I think it started, or 86. What do we want Troop to look like in 2000? It sounds a little silly right now, like 2000? Are you kidding me? And so they had formed a group and had a number of different areas of emphasis. And because I was at this new big, industry in town, they asked me to be a part of the education task force, which was trying to improve educational, performance in LaGrange and Troup County. And shortly after I got on this task force, we started looking at the data and found that Troup County had one of the worst dropout percentages, high school dropout percentages in the state, and the state was the second worst in the country.
Oh my.
So there were literally 40-some% of the kids didn't finish school. So it so happened that, and this is back to Young Life, that two guys who were 4 or 5 years older than me from my same township in Pittsburgh, and Young Life guys who I got to know through that, had gone to New York City and started a program called, at the time, Cities in Schools, and then moved to Atlanta because they thought that would be a better place to hub it out to everywhere.
Yes.
And it became a really popular by far the most popular dropout prevention program in the country. Not immediately, but Jimmy Carter latched onto it, took one of these two guys to Washington with him, and they set up the national office, while the other guy, Neil Shorthouse, stayed in Atlanta to basically continue to pioneer the actual protocol and activity that they did, so that it could apply to more places and more people. Because primarily at the time they were working with kids that had already dropped out to get them engaged with school. So, long story short there, I called Neil right away when I saw this, and I said, hey, could you imagine doing at the time they were working in 12 cities, and they were all mega cities, metropolitan cities, 1 million people plus. And they had money and resources.
Right.
I said, would you have any interest in working in a little bitty place like, and at the time, there were, the LaGrange school system was only LaGrange. There was no Troup County system. I'll say something about that later. But, so he said, not only would we be interested, we already have a platform that we designed for it. We're just waiting for a place.
Huh. So
they came down here, and the next thing you know, we had great cooperation and collaboration from the LaGrange School Board and the LaGrange City people, and we decided to pilot it and start it. And it has become, a real important part of our ability to improve and reduce the amount of dropouts. We're up in the high 80s, and we have been there. We can get better yet, I'm sure, but for a long, long time now. So it's 32, 33 years now that we've been in operation, and something like 1,000 kids or so.
Communities and schools.
Yeah,
right?
And that's the reason they changed the name.
Oh, really?
Was because and this is back to why I stayed in LaGrange and left Kimberly-Clark. So at the end, when we got this fully going, I spent the second year, which was turned out to be my last year at Kimberly-Clark in 1990, basically taking kids at Neil's request around the state that were in the program and speaking to school boards about this new initiative. And and these were all mostly small towns. A few, like we did go to Columbus and Macon, but most of them were smaller towns. And a lot of them were really intrigued by it, and a couple of them started it, and Neil said, why don't you come work with us for a year, and we'll really get this thing popping.
Yes.
Okay. And I just quit.
Yes. Yeah, and it's great.
And also, the other factor was Kimberly-Clark wanted me to transfer again, to go to Jenks, Oklahoma, where they were building another diaper plant. And we have 3 children. They were all the older ones were coming into junior high age, and we wanted them to, really have a place where they could belong and fit in. They had made some good friends. And I really liked the diversity and the needs of this community. And I thought this would be a great place for my kids to grow up in a real world, and see what needs to be done.
Yes, and Communities and Schools has been very successful here. And it's amazing to hear their statistics. I mean, it's great. And really, the statistics in Communities and Schools for the children are better than the overall statistics for the school system. So, I mean, it's truly an effective program.
Yeah. And we're really blessed to have Tabitha
Coverson
Lewis, and she is Tabitha Lewis Coverson, and her mother, Carol Lewis, was our second executive director. I was deeply involved in this for about 20 years, and she has become the president of Communities and Schools in Georgia.
Yes.
She manages the state.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, so what other missions have you been engaged in? I mean, you've been engaged in a lot.
Yeah, well, I told you about Young Life. That was I had a role to play in that, and then the biggest local enterprise that I've somehow or another managed to pull off was the Thread.
Yes.
Okay? And that's an asset that can benefit anybody that wants to in the community, that's interested in better health, in being a part of the community, and being outside, and we've had tremendous results with that. I assume most of the people who will be listening to this know what the Thread is. It's a multi-use trail that I basically got hooked on doing because of my daughters. Okay, so I have one daughter that moved to France with her husband, who, by the way, she's our youngest daughter, who grew up in LaGrange, decided to go to Penn State because she had never lived in Pennsylvania like our older 2 daughters had for a while, and married this wonderful guy. They met in Young Life,
Oh.
working in Young Life
Wow.
at State
Yeah.
College. And he's a mechanical engineer, and he got a job with a company based in Finland whose American presence was in York, Pennsylvania. They've been there ever since. He is now a senior vice president. He got transferred, asked to run a division in central eastern France near the big city of Lyon, which is a spectacular place.
Wow.
So we went over there a lot of times, and just were blown away by the trails there and how you could get on a bike or walk and go anywhere. You could get on a bike in Lyon and ride safely 200 miles down to the Mediterranean Sea.
Wow. Yeah.
So I came back and I wrote an email to Jim Thornton and Patrick Cruz and said, and there's some other things, like one of my other daughters had been in London for 8 years, moved back, bought a house at the bottom of the housing crisis in 2009 in Inman Park, downtown Atlanta, for almost nothing.
Yeah.
And 2 years later, the Beltline, which is Atlanta's version of the Thread, was founded and pioneered on a 2-mile segment, and she lived right on it.
Yes.
And what's happened there is just, that whole area has had $6.2 billion worth of development there.
Yes.
And mixed income and mixed, a diverse it's just been spectacular for that whole area. So anyway, so that that was a big part of it, those two kinds of things. But anyway, so I wrote this email to these guys and said, look, I want to go live in a place like this in Atlanta, in France. I told them we had just gotten back from France for the 4th or 5th time. And I said, I hope it'll be LaGrange.
Yes.
But if not, eventually we will move.
Yes.
And so they said, all right, we're with you. Let's give it a try. And so we had breakfast the next weekend at Gus's, and they said, look, we're all in on this, but this is not something that will work here, will fly, if it's government-led. It's got to be a partnership, and the real front voice of this needs to be the community.
Yes.
That the community wants it. And so anyway, so we established this part. They asked me to go right away see Tom Hall. And you remember Tom Hall, who was this amazing city manager we had. And I walked into Tom's office. Jim had already told him about this. And he said, the first 4 words he said to me were, "Where have you been?"
Oh, yes.
Because he had already thought about this. He had already planned some schematics about where it would go. He had set up the foundational redevelopment of Granger Park, and he had some money that he had stashed away from a previous SPLOST that could help us to get started. So we hired the group in Atlanta that was already building the Beltline, the Path Foundation, that has become basically the key builder in the South of trails. And within 9 months, we had a plan. We set up a meeting at Delevant where 330 people, this brings tears to my eyes.
Wow.
People attended, and it was off to the races. The city council approved it the next month, and now we have 10.5 miles on the ground and a 29-mile footprint, so we've got another 19 to go, but we've already added 4 different spur miles that have come through grants and things like that.
Wow.
So it's very exciting, and
Yes.
it has been one of the most gratifying things that I've ever done, to be on the Thread and to see all these people enjoying it and being the name, which Susan Bowie came up with, but was beautiful, is a place where we can thread the whole community together, where you can walk from one part to another. You can, no matter where you're from, you can be on Country Club Road, you can be in Calumet Village,
Yes. Yes, our family has truly enjoyed it. I mean, it's just really, we live downtown, and so it's really convenient for us just to walk and get on the Thread, and we love it.
Yeah.
So Thank you. It was a great idea. It still is.
Yeah.
It's still developing. All right, so I know you're on the DeSale ministry team at First
Mhm.
Presbyterian. Tell us what the DeSale ministry does and how you're involved.
Yeah, Doug DeSelle is the pastor who retired about 2 or 3 years ago. Now we have James Talbert, which is a great replacement for
Yes.
Doug, who was a very dear friend of mine in that. But Doug just decided one day that, he thought we should open our doors and got a group of people that he knew would be interested in this. I was, at the time, a traveling consultant, so I wasn't there very much. But this was a big passion of mine to be able to help and work with people who needed help. And so when I was capable of doing it, I spent time with it. And one of the times was 2 months shortly after they started. So and then I've been involved in it ever since.
Yes.
But basically, the ministry is to basically give people a place to come to get someone that will talk to them and listen to them, and then help them help themselves.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's the sort of stand up and walk
Uh-huh.
story in the New
Yes.
Testament, where Jesus says, "Stand up and walk."
Right.
You're going to be healed, but you stand up and walk.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's sort of what I don't know if you're familiar with the book Toxic Charity,
I
about
am familiar.
how just doing stuff for people and not engaging them in doing it themselves when possible, and that's not workable for everybody, is the only way they can ever really get better, and improve the quality of their life and really come to know what God created them for.
Yes.
So anyway, that's how it started. We met we were there right before I got here. We meet every Wednesday morning. For up until COVID, people came in, and that was wonderful. But then we have since shut that down until COVID is really over with, and we established a hotline, which has been really good, and we will continue the hotline. So anybody can call any hour of any day, and one of us every week checks the phone a couple times a day, and we call the person back. I mentioned to you before we got here this
Yes.
difficult case, and see what we can do to help them, to meet them in person, if they're willing to help themselves.
Yes. And what's that number, Bob? Do you know that right off the top of your head?
The First Presbyterian Church number, that's the number.
Okay.
At the top of my head, I don't know it.
Okay. So they.
But as soon as you call there, it says, the first thing it says is, "Welcome to First Presbyterian Church. If you are from LaGrange or Troup County and you have immediate needs, please dial pound 217 right now."
Okay.
Yeah, right.
Great. Great.
To get the DeSelle ministry.
All right.
And we've been, we're not terribly good at data collection, unfortunately, but somewhere over 800 people we've helped in the, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It is. I want you to go ahead and talk about your new job at Goodwill, and then we'll come back to some other things, but we want to make sure we get that in.
Yeah, definitely. So I've been honored to be asked to be the manager of the new Goodwill Career Center, the first time we have had a career center. And like most people, when I was told about this, I had no idea that Goodwill did career development, did anything really except manage retail stores.
Yes.
And we've donated
Right.
lots of stuff to Goodwill over the years, but that's all I knew about it. And most people that I've talked to, it was the same way. So when I was asked, and I can't remember, I think it was you actually that sent out a Goodwill Career Center email, yeah, and I said, wow, that's interesting, Let me see what I can find out about it. I looked it up and found out that the whole mission of Goodwill for 100 years has been to help people get jobs and keep jobs. Simple as that.
Yes.
In other words, to be stable, to be productive, to be fulfilled, to be who God wants them to be. And that has emerged into all kinds of different services that can be provided to people. And are provided all over the world, and we're fortunate to have a very successful Goodwill region based in Columbus that has decided to open one of these career centers in LaGrange on Commerce Avenue, where this magnificent building is being built right now. 2/3 of that will be a just fantastic upgrade of the retail store,
Yes.
which those of you that have shopped there or donated there will love. And the other third will be the Career Center, where we will have an open door for anyone who wants help improving their work capability and their fulfillment in life. We would be delighted to see them there.
Okay.
Plus, one other little thing that I'd
Okay.
like to put in a quick request for is Goodwill has been doing VITA work for years, which is voluntary income tax assistance for anyone making less than $57,000. We will be initiating that this year, starting in the first week in February. And we could use some people to be the volunteers.
Yes.
And we will train you and give you an actual certificate in helping to foster effective tax returns being created at no cost for people.
Yes, that's great. And the last couple of minutes, I would like for you just to run down quickly what kind of job training is at this Goodwill Career Center.
Well, all kinds. There are many different training initiatives that are available. We will start with the ones that are most needed, such as manufacturing training and capability. There's soft skills training. There's administrative training. There's hospitality training. There's all kinds of different programs that can be
Yes.
available. There's 12 different, including healthcare.
Okay.
So we'll put them on as needed.
All right, and they will be developed as the center opens?
That's correct, which will be sometime in early to mid-March.
Yes, that's so exciting. Thank you for watching You Make the Difference, and remember, you truly do.